This week at the movies, Denzel Washington deals with an apocalypse of biblical proportions.
It's the Book of Eli, also coming up this week.
Jackie Chan tries out a dangerous new stunt, babysitting in The Spy Next Door.
Matthew Broderick is a children's musician with a bad case of the blues in Wonderful World.
If I wanted a parasite, I'd eat raw pork.
Plus, our reviews of The Lovely Bones, Daybreakers, and Leap Year.
I'm not going to die without getting engaged.
This little town, just the beginning.
All we need is that book.
He's different than the others. You're not going to be able to make him do what you want him to do.
Denzel Washington is a man on a mission from God. I'm Michael Phillips of the Chicago Tribune.
And I'm A.O. Scott of the New York Times.
Is the world ending every 20 minutes at the movies these days? At this point, with 2012 in the road, an apocalypse has to really distinguish itself to stand out from the crowd. Well, guess what? The Book of Eli does just that. Denzel Washington plays Eli, a mysterious drifter trying to deliver into safe hands maybe the last known copy of the King James Bible. Here, he wanders into a dirty little town ruled by a dirty little man played by Gary Oldman, where the goons just keep on coming.
For out of the ground we were taken, for the dust we are. And to the dust we shall return.
That is one terrible swift sword. Oldman's stepdaughter, played by Mila Kunis, joins Eli on his travels. And it's been 30 years since the blast, as Eli refers to the event that brought the planet to its current state.
Well, what was it like?
People had more than they needed. We had no idea what was precious, what wasn't.
The directors are Alan and Albert Hughes, whose resume includes Menace to Society and Dead Presidents, both of which I liked. And what they've made here is basically an end-of-the-world Western. They fill out the central conflict between Washington and Oldman with good actors such as Michael Gambon and Francis de la Tour, two of England's best ham bones. They play a pair of flesh-eating survivalists named George and Martha.
George, look at them. One of them's just a girl.
Yeah, it's an old story. I heard it 100 times before.
We get so few visitors these days. George is suspicious of everybody. I'm Martha. Would you care for some tea?
There's a heavy blanket of religious fervor covering the Book of Eli, and there's also heavy use of that most cliched of all visual action movie cliches, the slow motion strut toward the camera. The Hughes brothers use what's useful, and they move on, and the actors take care of the rest. I like this movie. I say see it.
I didn't like this movie. I say skip it. You say it distinguishes itself from other end-of-the-world apocalypse pictures. I didn't see that at all. I felt like I've seen this landscape with the burned-out cars and trucks and the kind of vigilante gangs with all their aviator sunglasses riding around in the desert so many times before. In The Road recently, for example.
Road, yes.
And in the Mad Max Road Warrior pictures. And I just also felt like this character, Denzel Washington, is playing the heavy-hearted, reluctant avenger who, even though he's a man of peace who means nobody any harm, ends up chopping a lot of people into pieces.
Kill. Yes, I know. No, it's probably the most hypocritically violent film that really uses the Bible in ways that, yes, you feel uneasy about. But look, the Hughes brothers, I think they know how to frame and deliver an action sequence that doesn't look like everything else. You look at the first scene where Denzel Washington has to deal with this pack of goons, and they do this, the Hughes brothers, instead of cutting it up in the usual way, they give you a nice extended, interesting single-take shot in silhouette, and it actually pays off. It's exciting.
And yet you yourself, were just saying that they use the striding slow motion into the camera.
That's the one thing I don't like.
15 times. Also, I have to say, I'm not going to give it away, but there's a final plot twist in this movie that is beyond absurd. It is world-endingly ridiculous.
Well, the world has ended, in fact, but it's a B Western, and I think it really delivers on those terms. But my final question for you, Tony, is why doesn't the apocalypse ever show up in a movie where you'd really like to see it come along? Like, did you hear about the Morgans, where you really want to deal with the
you really want some cannibalism and some vigilantism, some slicing.
That's
and
a DVD extra I'd like to see. Go to our website and click on Web Exclusives for our look back on the career of Denzel Washington.
From the End of the World to Wonderful World, the title of which decidedly does not express the main character's view of things. Matthew Broderick plays Ben, a divorced, miserably employed guy who used to be a star on the children's music scene. Now, he can barely connect with his own daughter.
So what's new in school?
A guru came to visit us.
What were his past lives?
In one, he was a prince.
That's the trouble with reincarnation. Nobody was ever a museum guard or a paramecium.
She is 11 years old. She still wants to think the world is a nice place.
Writer-director Josh Golden dwells on Ben's grouchy misanthropy, which alienates everyone except his Senegalese roommate, Ibu, played by Michael K. Williams. Ben is further humanized when Ibu gets sick and his sister shows up, played by the lovely Sana Lathan.
This is your side of the room. I'm behind the curtains.
Ben, I cook you Senegalese meal.
Just because I'm giving you a roof over your head doesn't mean you have to cook for me.
While this movie is earnest and well-intentioned, it doesn't quite work. The pacing is slack, and the central character is treated with an ambivalence that makes the whole thing muddled and confusing. In the end, this guy's not really very interesting, let alone wonderful. So skip it.
Yeah, I say skip it too, Tony. Although I disagree with you on the confusing part. This is one of these indies where I really would have preferred a little more honest kind of confusion and the rough and tumble of real life. And the better film, honestly, in this same idea is The Visitor with Richard Jenkins. And there's a
very, very close. I mean, the stories track each other very closely.
Right, and you're really kind of dealing with the thawing of a character who's really basically, very kind of cold and hiding within himself. But the other thing that really kind of hit me as peculiar in this film is you have a fantasy character played by Philip Baker Hall called the Man, who represents everything Broderick's always railing against. And to have these fantasy discussions with the Man,
in this sort of
in a realistic,
very ground level, realistic thing, it doesn't work. Partly because the style isn't there that would sustain it and that would make it happen.
It makes no more sense in this film than it would have in The Visitor. So yeah, not quite good enough.
Okay.
Coming up next, Jackie Chan is known for his amazing stunt work, but can the action star handle a kids movie?
And later, a look at Amy Adams in Leap Year, Ethan Hawke in Daybreakers, and the big screen adaptation of a best-selling novel, The Lovely Bones.
Don't be afraid.
Let go! Let go!
Can you hold my turtle?
No.
Jackie Chan is a goodwill machine, even in movies like The Tuxedo or Rush Hour 3 or his latest, the all-ages PG-rated comedy, The Spy Next Door. He seems to be having a ball. Chan plays Bob, an undercover intelligence whiz on loan to the CIA. He's in pursuit of an equally acrobatic Russian criminal played by Magnus Sheving. Bob's lady friend, played by Amber Valletta, has 3 kids who are still smarting from their parents' divorce, and they do their best to sabotage Bob's efforts to ingratiate. Hollywood comedies love to endorse familial bonding through slapstick adversity like this.
Hey, Mommy, your best feet.
Can you, Mommy, do that?
Remember the movie Problem Child? Well, this movie plays like Problem Child served with leftovers from True Lies. Now, that's my opinion. As for my son, who's 9, he didn't really laugh much during this film, but he came out impressed and, in fact, enthusiastic. I chalk it up to Jackie Chan. This is his first Chan picture. He and the 9-year-olds and all of us, though, deserve a lot better material. I say skip it, Tony.
I say skip it, too. My son, who's a little older than yours, I took him to see it, and he was just full of contempt and rage, and he felt like, even though he didn't pay a dime to see the movie, he'd been ripped off. And one of the things that he objected to that I thought was interesting was the kids in this movie. I think they're some of the worst directed child actors I've seen in a long time. They just stand there and deliver their cute, precocious lines. They're sort of the teenage girl who's obnoxious, and the boy who's a little younger who uses lots of big words and is kind of nerdy, and then the cute little Muppet princess. And like everyone else in the movie, they're just kind of standing around. It's so static and so poorly directed.
Yeah, no, and there's only so much a guy like Chan and his stunt team can do with, a kitchen in a suburban tract home. And it's to the point in this film where...
The kitchen's the best scene, though, when he whacks the guy in the head with a frying pan.
The pots and pans scene, which Chan has done in other films, but this film made me weirdly grateful for the moment they actually get in a car and drive to an abandoned warehouse for another action. It's just like, finally, we're out of that house.
It made me grateful for the blooper reel at the end, which was, the only amusing or entertaining part of the whole picture.
Yes. Coming up next, Amy Adams has built a following with movies like Enchanted, but can she bring the same kind of magic to Leap Year?
And on next week's show, Harrison Ford and Brendan Fraser join forces to cure a deadly disease in Extraordinary Measures.
Say Hail Mary.
I wasn't gone. I was alive in my own perfect world. But in my heart, I knew it wasn't perfect. My murderer still haunted me.
We're taking a look at movies that have opened over the last couple of weeks. That was a scene from Peter Jackson's The Lovely Bones, which was originally set for a wide release before Christmas and then delayed until the new year.
Yeah, this is Peter Jackson's adaptation of a very popular novel by Alice Sebold about a young girl in the 1970s who's murdered by a serial-killing neighbor and who looks down from this kind of weird heaven place on everything that she's left behind. Now, when we reviewed this back in December, I was a rent it, you were a skip it. Have you had any second thoughts on that hasty judgment?
No, it was not a hasty judgment. Although it's nice to actually think back. It's been a long time since I've seen it, but 3-4 weeks. But despite the acting, which is rarely the thing that's going wrong with any movie first, I think, this is a case of a miscast director. I think Peter Jackson's brand of imagery is, and especially when you're dealing with the world of the in-between, this afterlife, I just felt like it just suffocated the picture. And I felt like I was watching a Claritin commercial over and over.
About this is that it's being remarketed. It came out and it was going to be a big, Oscar contender, literary adaptation, prestige movie. Now it's being the marketing is being rejiggered. It's being sold to teenage girls,
right?
Twilight
they're the same age as the protagonist, right? But it's not. Look, the whole thing makes me queasy, and what you don't get is Sebold's prose, which was the reason to buy the book. It's all plot.
I think so. I liked it a little better, but I do think still that it was a bit of a misfire. Also in theaters is the romantic comedy Leap Year, starring Amy Adams.
I'm going to propose to my boyfriend on Leap Day.
Yeah?
Yeah. So I thought, woo!
That's the stupidest thing I've ever had.
This is Amy Adams goes to Ireland to propose to her pill of a boyfriend who obviously just has to be gotten out of the way so she can fall in love with the charming dingle bartender played by Matthew Good.
Matthew Good with a heavy growth of stubble to signify that he's an authentic macho
Absolutely.
man.
Why am I working on this thing for 20 years and it never fills in up here for me?
So is this one we should see?
No, skip it. This is despite Amy Adams and Matthew Good, both of whom I like. This is just almost as painful as Did You Hear About the Morgans? So
yeah, it is. No, this is a total skip it. And once again, illustrating our thesis that we bring up again and again about the abysmal state of romantic comedies in Hollywood today.
Finally, Ethan Hawke stars in the vampire thriller Daybreakers. Now, this is a film I liked. I say see it. It's a B picture, much like The Book of Eli, I think, which I like better than you.
The Book of Eli. I say see it also, and I think it has a very interesting, witty premise. The idea is that in the future, everyone just about has become a vampire. There's a virus that's turned everyone into vampires. There are human beings around who are either hunted down or farmed for blood, and there's a blood crisis.
I don't hunt humans. That is your job.
I find him, you farm him.
A blood substitute means the end of human hunting.
Fake blood.
All right, well, if I believe that, I have to drive a stake through my heart right now.
The vampire society is falling apart. Ethan Hawke, it's a little like Avatar. He plays a vampire guy who goes over to the other side and joins the humans.
Right.
Really entertaining, witty. Falls apart a little toward
especially
the end,
the first hour, I was going to say.
We're seeing.
The picture reminded me of is District 9, which had a really strong first hour like this one. But no, I like it.
Yeah, it's a nice piece of wintertime escapism.
You bet.
Which is not how you describe our next film, which is the German submission for the Best Foreign Film Oscar. It's already won the top prize at the Cannes Film Festival and the European Film Award for Best Picture. It's The White Ribbon, Austrian director Michael Haneke's disturbing study of repression and brutality in a rural German village just before the First World War.
Yeah.
It's a gothic place of strange crimes, unsettling violence, and seething paranoia.
Darf ich hier bleiben diese Nacht? Schicken Sie mich nicht weg. Ich habe so Angst auf der Landstraße.
Haneke, the director, has said that this is his exploration of the roots of Nazism. And 20 years from now, you have to wonder what other crimes these kids will be planning. I don't question Haneke's craft. It's his ideas that get under my skin. A harshly pessimistic view of human nature and a simplistic idea of European history and society. Because of this, I can't wholeheartedly recommend it. But because this movie is worth arguing about, it's certainly worth renting.
Yes, it's worth arguing about. I say see it. It's much better than you're giving it credit for. I think Haneke, has dealt with this issue of national guilt before. So it's not just the Germans he's beating up on in his career. One of my favorite films of the decade that just missed my top 10 of the decade, Cachet.
Right.
Thriller set in Paris, Juliette Binoche. That film really, to me, is his best. This is a tick below that because it is a little overdetermined, as you say. But I think the panorama you get with this, in terms of dealing with class, all kinds of issues, religious fundamentalism, all this, it's all in there. And I think the acting is unbelievably good.
Well, it's a very interesting portrait of this world. But I think the problem with it is that the characters, you don't get the sense that the characters are acting out of any inner motivation, or they're playing assigned roles that I guess Haneke would say have been assigned to them by history and society, but really that have been made for them by him. And his idea, I think, of the essential badness of human, especially European beings is so, I always think, overwrought. I just feel like these movies are guilt trips for modern liberal-minded Europeans, and I find that a little bit insufferable.
No, it's much better than that. It's much better than that. And I think he knows how to use pulp in a way that actually is pretty crafty, and I thought it was gripping.
Well, I thought it was an interesting place to visit, but not a place that I would want to live. Coming up next, one of my all-time favorite movies and one of Michael's favorites from last year in our DVD Out Now segment.
Okay, you've lost me.
They're all kids in Washington. It's like Bugsy Malone, but with real guns.
Okay, now it's time for DVDs Out Now. For those who missed the sparkling repartee of Hollywood's golden age screwball comedies, the British film In the Loop takes some of that old fizz and puts it in a new bottle. It's a political satire skewering both London and Washington, D.C. power brokers. I am, however, a little reluctant to make a blanket recommendation regarding In the Loop. Why? Well, listen to this bit delivered by Peter Capaldi as the communications director of the British Prime Minister.
So therefore it falls well within my purview.
Within your purview?
Yes.
Where do you think you are? In some Regency costume drama? This is a government department, not a Jane Austen novel.
Malcolm.
That's right, the language is a teensy bit rough. There's plenty to bleep in this gloriously vicious-tongued parade of humiliation and folly, but the real glory of In the Loop is that it's both foul-mouthed and quick-witted. Too many comedies, just settle for the former. Well, I cannot wait to see and hear this one again, Tom.
Yes, this is like The West Wing loaded with F-bombs.
Yes, yeah, but funny.
But very, very funny. Now, maybe you've seen 9. If so, I'm sorry, though I did try to warn you. But the release of that misbegotten musical does give me an excuse to revisit the masterpiece that inspired it, Federico Fellini's 8½, just out in a new Blu-ray edition. This 1963 spectacle, in lustrous, smoky black and white with a matchless Nino Rota score, is the greatest movie ever made about not getting a movie made. And everything that fails miserably in 9 works brilliantly here. Marcello Mastroianni is the picture of Italian cool, and the fantasies, memories, and daily crises that plague him are whipped up by Fellini's artistry into a froth of crazy, swirling, passionate magic.
In Francia un uomo così sarebbe la vergogna alla nazione. Da buttare via dopo averci spremuto? Ah, Guido, come hanno ragione.
Now, Fellini made this movie in a state of creative paralysis and personal crisis, and rarely have artistic frustration and sexual confusion provided so much delirious pleasure. Maybe not for poor Guido, but surely for the viewer.
I think all cases of writer's block should lead to such great results, you know what I mean? And I think one of the reasons that 9, which I liked more than you did, and although I didn't love it, one of the reasons that 8½ is so much greater is that Nino Rota score. The music there is as great as Fellini's own contribution.
Yes, it's music that you actually would like to listen to. So both In the Loop and 8½ are available now.
Coming up next, can't decide what to see in theaters? Stay tuned for my 3 to See.
Closed captioning for At the Movies is sponsored by...
True or false? People who switch from Geico to Allstate save $373.
False.
It is false. They actually save more. An average of $473 a year. Now that's the right answer.
Hotel provided by Park Hyatt Chicago. Chicago's award-winning hotel and luxury dining experience. Located in the heart of Chicago's Magnificent Mile on Water Tower Square.
Okay, folks, my 3 to see this week is all about the end of the world as we know it. Number 3, Daybreakers. Good, grungy little vampire apocalyptic thriller set in the near future where Ethan Hawke's sallow complexion and sunken cheekbones finally get a proper explanation. He's a vampire. Number 2, The Book of Eli. Also an apocalyptic thriller set in the near future where Denzel Washington is on a righteous mission to protect a sacred text while kicking some sacred butt. And number 1, Avatar, set in the near future where James Cameron is still the king of the world when it comes to blockbusters with an undeniable and often dazzling it factor.
Well, I think a lot of people have already seen Avatar, and it's become quite a political hot button in a way. Lately, the Vatican even weighed in, giving its review a rather mixed review. I think kind of, however you say, rent it in Italian.
I would have thought the Holy See would have said see it, you know?
Oh, my goodness, Michael Phillips. That's it for now, thank goodness. We'll leave you with a recap of this week's show. Remember, you can follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Just go to atthemoviestv.com to find out how.
Join us next week for reviews of Extraordinary Measures with Harrison Ford and Brendan Fraser. And until then, we'll be at the movies.